Good day to you from Anagalactic on this Saturday, July 11th. Over here you'll see a simple diagram of a circle which appears to have 4 arrows and it goes around and around and around. That's the general meaning of that diagram. Just want to expand that just a little bit for a moment so you can get a good look at that. That looks like what I would call a diagram of a cycle. Cycle is a word related to the word circle, and a circle is a most peculiar object. Now, if you're tuning in for the first time, I always assume that that is the case. We have come a long way in this video series, but I wish to summarize for you, and really for those of you who have been tuning in, just what is going on here in this sequence. What am I attempting to demonstrate? Well, in the realm of science, we've reached the edge where we're stepping off the edge into the unknown. That's always the case at the cutting edge of science. There is some theory which is a fill-in for what is actually the answer. There's always some question that needs to be answered in science at the cutting edge. That would be the definition of the cutting edge. Currently, according to my calculations, based on 18 years of research in this area, the cutting edge of science can be distilled down to exactly 2 frontiers which are related. I am a geometer. You can also use the word geometrician, but geometer is a genuine word. I do geometry. I made a significant discovery which has not obtained consensual review, so I'm forced to say that, that is, to be honest. I've made a discovery of tremendous potential significance in the realm of geometry, but that's just the beginning of a saga. The geometry is that of the circle, which is a planar figure, so you have to realize the superspace of the circle is the plane. Actually, what I discovered goes beyond the geometry of the circle to the sphere, which is the volume analog of the circle. It is a closed object. A straight line, a Euclidean line, is called an open object because the line goes to 2 infinities. I don't think I need to explain that. That is something you probably would be willing to accept. When you compare the straight line, which is a planar figure, with a circle, which is another planar figure, you see a fundamental difference in those 2 objects. The straight line is open, as I said, but the circle is closed. And that closure obtains a tremendous significance for the cutting edge of science, which I would like to describe now so that you know where I'm at, because science is many things, and science can be approached in many ways. I only approach it in one way, the ultimate, the answer. We need solutions, which is quite a topic because science has no goal. At any one moment, it has specific goals in what is thought to be a linear sequence of proof, which of course I accept. That is how science has made its progress, by a gradual building of our knowledge base and integrating that knowledge into understanding. The knowledge base continues to grow, and therefore the knowledge is capable of contributing to greater and greater understanding, which is another interesting topic worthy of some philosophical discussion, which of course we're not going to go into now. But I have covered all these topics in prior videos. Where I'm at are the 2 cutting edges of absolute science, real science, true science, what science is actually for. Again, a very interesting definition, which would necessarily sound pedantic because by necessity you're excluding other options or other frameworks. But my framework is designed to be absolute. We want the solutions that Einstein could not get. We want the solutions that Paul Dirac could not get. We want the solutions that none of our modern physicists apparently ever will get. And so it's necessary to make perhaps a short list or perhaps a longer list are what are our questions. This goes to philosophy necessarily because ultimately you have to ask the question, why do you want to know this? Is it for entertainment? I hope not, although that is part of life. I have studied science and continue to study science because it's the most entertaining aspect of reality I've ever encountered. Is the truth of the universe. What does the universe actually tell us? That's the ultimate question. What is it telling us? But that's a very open-ended question, because obviously the universe is telling us everything we know. It's telling us everything. It's just that we can't piece it together. Well, what are we trying to do by piecing it together? We're trying to orient our own lives as individuals. There is also a group aspect to that. By projection, you can attempt to formulate what is humanity trying to do. We have all of these scientists out on YouTube and all the universities. Most of them are paid by the government. But however they make their living, they obviously are very much engaged with getting answers. Now in technology, it's a directed end. So you have to exclude that. We're not interested in technology for obvious reasons. I hope I'm not going too far, over the top by saying that we need to rigorously exclude technological solutions. We're not interested in making bombs. We just are not interested in conquering the world or guiding the destiny of humanity to some nefarious conclusion. We're not political. We don't involve ourselves in dubious prospects. We're simply trying to get answers. Well, that raises a question, and that puts every scientist on the rack. You have to be able to define at any time exactly what it is you're trying to do, or there is no way to credit what you're saying. Because is it only for entertainment? Now, we are innately curious creatures. When we look up at the moon as children, we're most curious about the moon and we have questions. Well, that's natural, of course. So that is part and parcel of the framework in which science exists. It's part of a larger framework called the human equation. I call it that because, of course, we're doing something as humans. What are we doing? Well, it's pretty obvious that what we're doing is heading for death. And that's a very, very difficult topic to face. So I only bring it up because it's necessary, because it's part of the equation. You're not going to be here pretty soon. And you weren't here very long ago. You're only here for a short time. Now this sounds like the beginning of a sermon of some kind, which of course I wish to avoid. But it is necessary to be brutally honest in science. It's brutal. You must face all facts. If you're ignoring some facts because you don't like them, you're not a scientist. It's just plain and simple. You're just not ever going to get anywhere because you're not real. You're not truthful. You're not honest. So I attempt to be as honest as science will allow me to be. So what is it that science is trying to do, according to me? This would have to be personal. What do I say? Why would you listen to me rather than Neil deGrasse Tyson? Why would you listen to me rather than any other scientist? What is it that I think that I have that is so important? Well, take a look at that diagram over there. That is a rather simple image. It indicates a cycle. Okay, what are the questions that science has right now in physics that pertain to my level, the highest level? What is it that science actually wants that's important? Can you define that? Let me give you a framework for an approach to some definition, because that's a huge question. My God, even though you're limiting it to physics, you're not talking about biology or any other branch of science, you're talking about physics. Well, that means the physical universe. Well, what does that mean? Pretty much everything we see, which fits into our situation as humans. We're not angels. We're not able to just fly around among the stars and talk to higher order intelligences and get training in reality. We're on our own. We're on this planet. We look up. We're baffled. We look at the ecology, we're baffled again, but we're fascinated. It's obvious that the universe is trying to tell us something, but we have to get it very quickly, or we die without knowledge, as it says in Holy Scripture. Now, to die without knowledge is considered to be a reprehensible result. I hope you agree. That's exactly how I approach science. It's a game. It's a game. But it's a deadly game once you incorporate the harsh, brutal fact of death. After which, I don't really need to go on, you're done. Everybody's done with you, you're done with everybody, you're done with everything, you're not really part of the universe anymore, you're gone. So whatever you're going to do as a human, you're going to do it now, and you're running out of time. That's just simply a fact. You see, when you bring up a fact, you're doing it for a reason, so you probably have a political motivation. You're trying to save the children, or guide your nation, or sway other minds to form a mob to just swarm the capital and get rid of the current autocracy and instigate some form of anarchy so the planet can go on, so all the hippies can be happy growing vegetables and smoking pot. Something like that. That's not what I do. I'm not attempting to change the course of history, although I may be offering you choices, and I believe that's the service of science to humanity, is to offer us choices. It may offer you a choice against your current goddamned religion, which you hate. And most Americans hate religion. Now, I'm not saying that all people hate religion, but anybody who has a religion is biased. They like their religion. And by definition, their religion is correct, and nobody else's religion is. Is that what you want? Well, you're perfectly welcome in the Mormon Church, you're perfectly welcome in Hinduism, Buddhism, or you can just be a free agent and just be an agnostic. You're just making comments. All you're doing is having fun. You're having fun with the stupid religionists. Are we having fun with the stupid scientists? I'm not. I took religion very seriously in my religious phase, which was over 50 years and actually is still continuing. So I do have a religion, but it's not like any religion you've ever heard of. It's the true religion, of course. But as far as I can tell, it's unique to myself. So that's not really very helpful to anyone else, so I don't talk about it. I have my religion, it's correct, and that's the end of the story. I don't need your religion, I don't need any religion. I have the true religion. And I give it names because I've identified it with something that does exist already. But that's just me. That's not for you. You would reject that out of hand, and you should. Because I can't prove that my religion is correct. Well, actually, I can. So what we're going to do is approach my religion, so that you'll get it, so you'll be saved. Is that really what I'm doing? That's a fool's errand. But alas, that is my commission. So that's what you're dealing with. A megalomaniac pundit. And I'm going to stay that way until the day I die, because I'm right and you're wrong. And that's the way it is. So that's the framework. I've got the answers in science because I know the absolute framework of religion. So I know what science is for. But if I told you, you wouldn't listen. Or if you did listen, you wouldn't be able to hear it. You can't. And you shouldn't. Why should you? You would just be believing another man. And you'd be locked in the same cycle that you hate and you'll do anything to stay out of. So you're not going to listen to me. But what about science? Science is objective. Is it? It's always filtered through humans, so how can it be objective? It's because you can validate what someone else says, because they can give you a proof sequence that you can't deny. And then even if you don't like it, if you're honest, you'll accept it. But if you're honest, you couldn't be honest if your life depended on it. You've been programmed to be whatever you are now, and that's how you're going to stay. Now, I believe that men can be changed. That is a religious point of view. But objectively, it's not true. Men cannot be changed. You are going to stay whatever way you are, and nothing will change it until the day you die. You don't need me. You don't need Jesus. You don't need Einstein. You don't need anybody or anything because you're set in your ways. I hope, and I might even add, I hope and pray, as the old phrase goes, I hope and pray that that is not a description of you. But if it is not a description of you, you're unique. Otherwise, you're the same as every other human who's ever lived, of any age, of any level of intelligence, of any level of insight. You're exactly the same as Buddha. You're exactly the same as Jesus, as far as you'll ever know or care, because you are your own world, and you've been brainwashed, trust me on that, to believe that you're an independent entity. You are you, and that's that. You have your identity. You can even change any aspect of your identity, including getting an operation on your loin because you think you're somebody else that's locked inside this poor body where you are trying to get out. Well, goody for you. Everybody else thinks exactly the same way that you do. You're not unique in any way. What would make you unique is if you're trying to break out of the labyrinth in order to go free. But you know from painful experience that every time you do that, you're going to be beaten down until you're senseless. And then you go back to work and you try to carry on your irrational life, facing death, which you can't face, and so you won't. And that's that. So you're just going to go on and on and on until you're dead, no matter what. Now, a true scientist does not do that. He doesn't orient himself that way. A true scientist is a desperado. And he's locked into a system that is so rigorous that it will crush him, if he's honest, if he disobeys its laws. Laws of logic, laws of proof, laws of reality. Well, who's to decide what those are? Only you can decide. You can listen to Einstein. For that matter, you can listen to Muhammad. You can listen to anyone who's speaking. How do you cherry pick? Do you cherry pick, or are you just totally objective? Of course you're not. You're a product of your environment, and you can't change. You have been programmed to be what you are. Now, to get to what I'm talking about, I have made, over the past 4 years, a series of discoveries that absolutely changes the foundation of science, mathematics, and geometry. It changes logic. It changes the orientation of science, wholesale across the board. I have all the answers that Einstein wanted. I have all the answers that Dirac wanted. I have all the answers that humanity has been seeking since the beginning of time. What does that make me? It makes me a target. It makes me someone that others need to beat senseless until I come back to my senses and rejoin the human race. Because it's obvious I'm megalomaniac. And a lot of people have been. There are guys like, I'll just name Joseph Smith, one of my favorite targets of personal ad hominem assault. Joseph Smith claimed to be a prophet of the Lord Jesus Christ. Really? Well, I'm laughing, but there are millions of die-hard Mormons who believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet. So they've made their decision, they're fine. Most of them live in Utah, I would suspect. They tried to make their own nation. I don't know if you've ever studied that. They came damn near close to making Utah an independent nation in a time when the West was still being overrun with white buggers from Europe. And Joseph Smith was just one of those white buggers who was attempting to cut out a parcel of earth for, his people. Well, he was a prophet, he said. But I've read I've read a lot of stuff in the Mormon religion. I did spend over 50 years studying the Christian religion, and holy smokes, I just can't go back. I'm just like you that way. I'm totally biased against religion. I can't stand it anymore. It makes me sick because I know everything about it that I need to know. Is it for you? No. No. You do not want to know what I know about religion. It's horrendous. I've even impugned Christianity. I still claim to be a Christian, but I can't stand Christians. It's like saying you love someone, but you can't stand being around them, like a family member you may know. Yeah, you still love your sister or whoever's related to you. Of course you love them because you love puppies. You love anything that's related to you. You're stuck with them, but you can't stand them. Is that really love? You love you love your brother or whatever. It even goes to friends. You love your friend, but god damn, does your friend just irritate the shit out of you? Well, I mean, if you extend that to eternity, you're in hell. And I've heard comedians go on this way. It's like, what if you get to heaven and there's your nagging aunt, and now you have to listen to her for all eternity. You may want to have an audience with God and just say, you know what, I think I'd prefer hell. It's got to be better than this because I got to listen to her forever. Yeah, I love her, but I don't know. It's up to you, Lord. I don't know. I don't know how people negotiate these difficult questions of eternity, but I have, and I'm satisfied with my answer, and I don't need anybody else. Well, that makes me just like you. So you're just listening to another talking head. Is that right? No. Not in science you're not. Not if it's done correctly, but you see, that's a huge if. Can you believe your scientific pundits? Is there really such a thing as space-time? Well, we're curious. I've been vastly curious with that question. Is there such a thing as quantum entanglement, and does it violate light speed? Well, that's a puzzle. And we're designed to solve puzzles. Which leads me to my topic. This is a game. And I insist on that because, of course, I'm right and nobody else is. It's just like this cycle. You see this cycle here? I consider this to be ultimate profound. This is ultimate holy. You know why? Because it describes everything we see in the heavens. That describes the cycle of the earth around the sun. That describes the cycle of the moon around the earth. It describes the phases of the moon. It describes the orbit of electrons around a proton, or a proton core. It actually describes light, and that's what I'm leading up to. Wouldn't you like a definition of light, energy, time, space, space-time, whatever that is? I know, but nobody else does. And here we go. Round and round and round. What the hell are you going to trust? You've got to hear it from a human, because if you get it for yourself, you don't need any answer. You already got it. So why are you listening to me? Because you suspect, I hope and pray, that I know what you don't know, and I can prove to you what you don't know that now you will know because I can prove it to you, because you can then prove it to yourself. Well, what's that? Imaginary physical space. Excuse me while I collect myself. All right, so let's get down to brass tacks here. I have discovered a space that nobody can see, but we've discovered it. It's just that we've discovered it indirectly. When we go out to the edge of the universe to find out the edge, because wouldn't that be nice to know? Is the universe finite or not? That's a major question nobody's been able to answer thus far. We have models, we have theories, but I think it's pretty dicey. So when you look out and out and out, just go as far out as you can, what do you find? Because you certainly would need to know where you are. That's a good way to find out where you are. Look around and see how far are the bounds. Well, if you look out into outer space, you get dizzy, you get vertigo. Do you know why you can't really force yourself to see the edge of the universe? Well, assuming that it's infinite, but you keep trying to penetrate with your vision, as you keep looking out, you're seeing a larger and larger volume of space per your parallax view. And so it gets larger and larger and larger to an infinite extent. Well, as that happens, you see it's widening, but it looks the same to you. But what you see in this distance between your two eyes is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So there's more and more volume between your eyeballs as you process this in your brain until it goes to infinity and your eyes basically go wall-eyed and now you're in a coma and you can't come back. That is the fear, and your body won't let you do that because it'll get vertigo. And the reason is that you're losing track of time. And Albert Einstein proved this, so this is a really good Gedanken experiment. Much better than the trains bouncing light beams between the train's mirrors, which I always found baffling, although now I finally do understand what he was trying to say. He was trying to say something about relativity that's actually rather simple, is that with any distance, there is a linearly directly related time lag. So as you're seeing out into space, and you see this, your apparent field of view is what it's called, but inside your apparent field of view, which is fixed, the actual volume of space is getting larger to infinity. Well, as you start to approach infinity, which is a strange enough thing to say, you start to lose track of time. Because in that volume that you're seeing, which gets bigger and bigger and bigger in your fixed frame of reference, there's a bigger and bigger time span. So finally, as you see out into billions and trillions and googolplexes of infinities, virtual infinities, just farther and farther out, and your eyes are starting to dilate, maybe you're on LSD, it doesn't really matter in this case, your body won't let you do it. You'll pass out. Or you'll fall over and be totally disoriented to desist what you're doing. Because if you keep doing that, you'll get lost in time and not be able to come back to reality. That's why you can't see the edge of the universe. Well, does it exist? I've proved that it does. Which raises a huge paradox. So that's the question that I answered. The most difficult question of all. What is infinity? Well, you begin by saying it's an imaginary space. Can that be proved? Is imaginary space physical? Well, I think you can see that I have a hypothesis that it is. That when you get to the edge of the finite universe and it goes to infinity, it goes into a superspace, which is physically real, but we can't imagine it. So that's your first contact with physical imaginarity. The second contact with physical imaginarity is in the quantum system, which is quite interesting to try to state what that is. It's easy to state what the problem is going out. Is you're going to pass out, you're going to vomit, you can't do it because you're trying to go into a space that your mind is not designed to see. But you see, you do have a mind capable of knowing that, and that's called imaginary space. So instead of, going around in a circle until you fall over and conk your head on a rock because you're trying to see into infinite time, instead of doing that, which is stupid because you can't, what you do is you recognize that fact and state what I stated as a hypothesis, that beyond the edge of the universe is a superspace that cannot be imagined, which is a direct contradiction with consciousness. If you can't imagine it, what is it? It's exactly what you said it is. It's an imaginary space that you can't imagine. A direct contradiction, and that's the edge. I solved that geometrically. Now, in order to get the proof sequence for how I solved that so you can know it too, whatever good it's going to do you, I have no idea. It's done wonders for me because it leads directly into the religious side of life because that's where God lives. Now we're getting there. If you haven't seen the last video or 2 or 3 or 1,000, you probably wonder why I would suddenly talk about God, because that's the ultimate question that we all have to answer before we die. Do you believe in God? And if so, so what? Can you even talk about it? You should be able to talk about it. You better be able to talk about it, or your religion is absolutely in vain. Or you could just sit there, as many men I think try to do. You go off into a cave, You seal yourself up in a cave and have people drop in bags of barley. This is actually done in Tibet to this very day. Well, I'm not sure after the Chinese took over, but whatever. In the recent past, people go up into caves and lock themselves in there for months so they can be alone with their thoughts because they're talking to God or whatever they think they're doing. Well, that's not very scientific. It may be human. I'm vastly interested in that phenomenon, but I try not to be stupid about it. It certainly isn't for me. I'm perfectly happy with life the way it is. Because of this diagram, the cycles of nature, that's really what I'm leading up to, is a discussion in the harsh tones of rigorous science of what does it mean, a cycle. Well, light speed is involved with a cycle. I don't know if you knew that. Light is a cycle. Light is a cycle. Right? Well, what else is it? Is it a particle? Big bag of worms there, right? Is it a particle? Is there such a thing as a photon? I can prove to you that there is, but it's a new proof, and it's a proof that light is something that your scientists are 100% unaware of. So I can tell you what light is. I can also show you exactly where time is on this circle. And I can prove to you that light speed actually not only can be exceeded, it's always being exceeded. That light speed is not only the boundary to break, it's been broken since the beginning of time. And everything we see is in excess of light speed. But that's in an imaginary space according to the way we see physically. And by that I mean this applies even more to congenitally blind people, because they can see this even better. Because we have a visual perceptual system in our consciousness that is capable of reconstructing the universe exactly the way it is, with one vast exception: physical, imaginary space, which by definition doesn't fit. What I've discovered is you can make it fit. It wants to fit. And when you do finally see physical imaginary space, then you will see clearly. You will have supervision. Can the government get hold of that? I don't know. Could it be used for evil? I don't know or care. Evil cannot possibly win. I'll just leave it at that. So this is a win-win-win-win-win-win outcome. To get the actual answers, to finish science, to end it, to get the absolute answer that everybody has always wanted, which by definition, once you get it, you've conquered everything. You're done. You're ready to die. You made it. You won the game. And nobody can touch you. You have no enemies left. Nothing can hurt you. You're free, and you're going to go be with God forever. That's the goal. And nothing else matters. And if you've never faced that, you're what is called normal. You're a normal person. You're in the matrix. You're going to stay there. You're going to kiss your puppy. You're going to pretend that you're human when you're not. You're going to do what you're told because it's easier. And you're going to live out your life until you die listening to your brain-dead music. And you're just going to be distracted in every way you can because it makes you happy for now. And then you'll die without knowledge. And then you'll face reality when it's too late. That's the fear. That's a religious fear. For the fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. That is written. I fully credit that, because you can trust the aphorism if you can trust the source. I happen to know all these things. I know exactly where I get my wisdom. And I'm done. I don't need to be here. I actually, in a way, don't want to be here. But I'm under commission. And that's part of my religious framework. I'm under command. And as the great Nobel Prize laureate in literature, the great Bob Dylan, Robert Zimmerman was his original birth certificate name, he penned a beautiful line in his Nobel Prize laureate winning way. You're going to have to serve somebody. It may be the devil, and it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. You already are. You just are blissfully unaware of it. Is it the devil or is it the Lord? I couldn't care less, okay? I'm not here to convert you to anything, but the universe is, and I speak for the universe. I speak for God. So help me, God. I speak for the Lord, not the devil. So what does that mean for you? Turn this off before it's too late. Erase me from your memory. You do not want to know me. Because of what I just told you, I'm being honest. I'm not exaggerating. This is not for children. Examine yourself. What do you want out of life? Because you're looking at someone that you cannot fool. What do you want from me? Well, I'm going to tell you what you want, whether you like it or not. And I don't care about anything else. And that's dangerous, because that's just exactly how Joseph Smith talked. And he led several million people to hell. In other words, to just sheer out-of-touch oblivion. No Mormon is going to heaven. Let me just be clear. No white scientist is going to heaven. They can't. They've already decided whom they serve, because they can't grow up. They can't face reality. They just can't. When they think about death, they get dizzy and they fall over and they hit their head. And when they wake up, they look for their puppy to French kiss it and then turn on some shit-ass music to go back to sleep in the Matrix, because it's safe. That movie, The Matrix, has an amazing message. Are you willing to take the red pill? I know that you're not, and you won't. You never will. But that will not stop me from telling you the truth that you can't refuse. I'm the Godfather. You've reached the top. This is where the buck stops. It's with me. I'll tell you the truth. Nobody else will. Nobody else can. But they're just like you. They're trapped in the Matrix. You have PhDs. They have big cars. You have politicians, and they have big cars and whores. And then you have the ones who actually control the world, wherever they are and whoever they are. I'm not sure anybody knows, although you may suspect that I know. Not exactly, but they're there. Well, they not only have big cars and whores, they have the power of life and death over all humanity. And who gives them that power? Is it the devil or is it the Lord? I've heard a lot of people say that there's just no way they're going to believe in God come hell or high water, because how could God be so cruel? Is it God who's being cruel? Can you tell the difference between Satan and God? Can you? Most men can't. And so Bob Zimmerman's words come true. You're going to serve the devil or you're going to serve the Lord, but there is no fucking in between. You're either serving God or you're serving the devil. And I am qualified, authorized to tell you, unless you already know that you're serving God, I think you know whom you're serving. And you're happy. Oh, Satan can make statistically enough people happy so that his little engine grinds on. Well, that goes to imaginary space, because Satan cannot be seen. In fact, neither can God. So they exist in imaginary space. Is that physical? Well, from our point of view, it would have to be physicality of some kind, or they simply can't exist even in our mind. But is God a spirit? Well, a famous man, the most famous man who's ever lived, Yeshua HaMashiach, said of his father that his father is a spirit. Well, what's that? It's imaginary. He said that his father is imaginary. But is his father real? Well, I think he went out of his way to show that his father is real. So that's the chief prophet, the head of all the prophets. There is, however, Muhammad, who came after Yeshua. So this isn't exactly about cycles. Oh, yes, it is. Do you know what Christianity is based in when you go back to its origin? It's based in the cycles of nature. And Christianity is about the cycles of nature. It's about light speed. It's about the edge of the universe. It's about everything that's in physics that you and I would call science. Is pure religion. Because it has an answer. It's logical. It has a solution. What's the solution? That God is a spirit, for one thing. And you can accredit the aphorism if you can accredit the source. That's from Espionage, on which I am something of an accreditable master. I was a spy in Ukraine for the United States CIA. I actually was unaware of that, but that is exactly what I found out later. I was part of a CIA outpost in Kiev, where I preached the gospel. What does this have to do with this circle over here? Well, that's not just a circle, it has an arrow. And that's energy. So energy is not spatial, and you can see that. It's not spatial. How can I say that? It's because it's not linear. And everything we see is linear, or we would not be able to take a distance measurement to a star, which is a straight fucking Euclidean line. So then you would have to ask yourself, as Einstein asked himself, why is that star not where you see it? Why are the photons lying to you about the position of that star? Because according to relativity, which I think you can visualize pretty clearly, is as the light is traveling from that star, when it reaches your telescope, a certain amount of time has elapsed, perhaps 10 billion years, if it's light that the James Webb Telescope is gathering. So it says that that galaxy, a virtual point source of light, although you know it's not a point source, it's called an extended source of light, but it's so far away, it hardly has any shape. Well, the James Webb Telescope is capable of resolving galaxies at about 10 billion light years away. Well, that's 10 billion years that the light traveled. And in that time, the galaxy moved. So the photons all lie in their teeth, if you could say photons have teeth. They don't have teeth, they have information. And that's real. Or light would not tell us anything. So where is that information stored? As the light travels, it's stored in a particle. It would have to be, or it can't be coherent information. And that leads to the collapse of the wave function, which I solved, which Paul Dirac himself said is the only question left to solve. And Paul Dirac certainly had a reputation for knowing what he talked about. That man was quite peculiar. But I'm way more peculiar than Paul Dirac, because I got the answer that he wanted. And I also got the answer that Einstein wanted, which is essentially, at his dying day, the question he wanted was, how come it looks like in quantum mechanics that light speed is violated? Why does it look like that? I have the answer to that. And you can only see it once you see what this cycle means, because that contains the imaginary physical dimension, which is perpendicular to reality. And that may sound crackpot. Whatever the solution is, it's going to be the most crackpot solution ever foisted on humanity. I got it, and it's provable. So you're going to be hearing the absolute answer to all of science that finishes science, that gets all the answers. And it will eventually, once you've done listening to me, it proves the existence of God. It will convert your soul, and you will be beyond Christianity and Islam. You'll know everything about God, because I know what that is, and nobody else does. So, that's what you're looking at. So first of all, that is energy. That is a diagram of energy. And that's why the moon seems to go around the Earth. It's not because it has Newtonian velocity. It's because it has intrinsic velocity, which was invested into the universe at the Univex event, which replaces the Big Bang. The Big Bang was an explosion, so that's wrong. The universe did not explode. What did it do? It didn't do anything. The universe was invested with energy from physical imaginary space, and that's the only way the universe can be conceived as beginning. It was with an injection of energy, which is what that is. So that is the origin of the universe, is that. And everything in the universe conforms to that cycle. And the universe is rotating. It's rotating inside of a superspace. And that gives light speed its fixed speed. The speed of light is determined by the rotation rate of the universe. And that's why the photon does not have Newtonian velocity, and you can't say that it's a speed. Light speed is not a speed. Light speed is a relationship between two fundamental quantities called a proportion. And light speed is not a speed. It's a proportion. It's a proportion. Distance is one of the quantities, and then there's that little line called a vermatrix or something like that in Latin. That little line that we say we were taught in school means division. No, it doesn't. Distance on top is linear spatial separation. That's physiological. That's the only way we can see the universe, is with Euclidean geometry. However, you can force your mind to do a reboot to curvature, and that's not straight. That's exactly what straightness is not. It's the rest of the universe. So what we see is a scaffolding universe. We see a skeletal universe. But our minds are so powerful that it pieces together all the linear information and makes it look spherical. What I will train you to do is to bypass the linear grid system, which is extrinsic. It's physiological, but it's extrinsic. So you have to overcome your own body in order to actually see reality. And that's the hardest trick of all. Nobody's been able to do that so far except me. I'm the only man who's penetrated the veil between reality and the linear scaffolding. So what I discovered is intrinsic geometry, and you can see that. That's a closed line. Well, that's non-Euclidean. That's non-Euclidean. And what that represents is the proportional relationship between what I would be forced to characterize for now as distance, but it's conjugal. And Einstein proved that. It's just that he proved it within the linear scaffolding. So he got time-space. That's incorrect. What you're seeing there is not space-time. And space-time does not properly exist, although it does have a geometry. So space-time is actually a pseudo-hyperboloid geometry. I know that's a fancy-dancy term. It's time you grew up and started learning something. So time-space, that is space-time, is what it's usually called. Those are two different things, by the way. So space-time is the conjugation in the linear systematic system of 3D space, which is incorrect because it's a scaffolding. So you're using the extrinsic imposed geometry. That's what Einstein used. That's a mistake. He was too stupid to see that he can't start that way. I'm smarter than Einstein, and I went back a step before Euclid's mistake. He misdefined the point, which means he misdefined the line. And I could go on about how profound that is and how that changes our mathematical system and our use of operators. But distance over time is not division. It's proportionality. And it shouldn't be written that way because you were trained in school to think that that's division. It should be written d:(t). And that's non-commutative. Distance proportion time. And that's that cycle. except that it's not time, and it's not even distance. It's something else. And one of the components is non-spatial. And you can see that, because spatiality is strictly linear, or we couldn't take a distance to a star. That's linear. But you know that that's bogus, because you're not computing in the time lag. And that's called the falling places of the stars in the Quran. So the top level of cutting-edge physics is in the Quran. And that was pointed out to me by my Islam teacher, peace be upon him. And he pointed out that passage from the Quran, which I strongly recommend you look up. The falling places of the stars refers to the fact that when you look at a star, it's not there. It's somewhere else. Well, how can that be? Because the photons themselves tell you that the star is there. Are they lying? No, they're just reporting where they're from when they knew where they were from. So they're telling you where that star was when they left. And that's truthful. But men are too stupid to realize that until Albert Einstein got the cat out of the bag. He rescued Schrödinger's cat. He said that star is not there. It's only relativistically there. It's actually somewhere else by the time you see it. And that's called the falling places of the stars. That none of the stars you see are actually where you see them. The photons are reporting where those stars were when those photons left their source. But those stars have since moved in all directions in volume space. They're not where they are. And that really baffles us. It was very difficult for men, even top-notch scientists who should know better, it was very difficult for them to accept general relativity. Space-time introduces all kinds of paradoxes, which you have to get used to at the cutting edge. But the ultimate paradox now, today, at this moment, being discussed by maniacs and psychopaths all over the white world, and really all over the world, is how do you square, I shouldn't say square, how do you reconcile the fact that two entangled particles communicate without space or time? That they're totally one particle, but they're in two different positions, but it's one particle. How do you explain that? Well, you can't in the Einsteinian framework. What you need is this circle. And then you'll see that on one side of the circle, let me use a pointer here, on two antipodal points on the circle, let me make sure I get my, is that the pointer? You see the pointer? I think you can see it. I hope that's it. Yeah, that's it. I have two pointers, so I have to be cautious. You have a point over here, and then you have a point over here. Well, those are the two entangled particles, and they're locked together in a space you can't see. It's imaginary. But they're actually part of a circle. They're actually one thing, and there is no time or space in between them, because they're on a closed line, and that's enough. We're coming up on an hour. So I'm going to summarize this part of my groundbreaking, actually epical, game-changing, science-changing, get the answers, finally you can go on. Science can restart now because of me. And that's what I have to offer, is the absolute answer to everything. That's called the theory of everything, according to Kurt Jaimungal's former name of his channel used to be Theories of Everything, because of course there are numerous theories of everything. Well, that actually has a specific definition, but I'm using it in its total abstract sense. The theory of everything, embracing God, devils, demons, angels, everything from particles to waves, to the edge of the universe, to the center of the universe. Everything is totally explicable once you kickstart your mind in another dimension. And it is a spheric dimension that is absolutely imaginary. You're looking at it. That's a closed line. That's where time lives. Because time has to do with motion, not space. Not space? That's right. And that's why when the photon, expanding as a sphere, reaches your telescope, that enormous sphere collapses to an imaginary point. And that baffles the shit out of your physicists. That's called the collapse of the wave function. It's not a function, it's not really a wave, and it certainly doesn't collapse. It's simply the particle traveling through physical imaginary space when it reaches another atom that it can combine with. And that completes the flight of the photon. There's no collapse. It's just a particle that reaches its destination. But you can't see that unless you can see spherically. That's what I'm going to train you to do. But you can't force it. Well, only you can do that. I can't force you to do that. You can't force love, you can't force fun, and you cannot force understanding. If a man resists, he's allowed to do that. And you will. You won't do this. And I know you won't. You'll never believe me, even though I prove that you can do it. And there's no way you can escape the logic that you can actually see, so that you actually see God. You will. He exists in that cycle. That's his actual message. There are no prophets worthy of their name, except one. Because you also need to get an answer from heaven. Why is the earth going to hell? Well, only God could tell you that. Well, then you need a transmission from heaven. And that's when you need espionage and forensics, because you can't trust the message unless you trust the source. And so you're stuck. And you're too lazy, you're too retarded, you're too brainwashed, you're too far gone. I know that you won't wake up. You're going to stay in the matrix. Good. So therefore, I told you, I warned you, if you listen to me, you're going to know that you're damned. And then you're going to have to listen to me. And that's the bitterest pill of all. Because I'm a guide, I'm better than you, I'm a leader, you're not, you're a slave, you're stupid, you're awful, you're immoral, and you're dangerous. And I don't like you. But I will try to save you, because God loves you. And you can go to hell if you don't like that. Thank you very much. Keep tuned in. I'll be showing you where time is and what it means so that you'll know. And then you'll be able to penetrate the edge of the universe, solve the collapse of the wave function, go way ahead of your physicists, and then you'll know that they're going to hell, but you're not, because now you know Allah. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, may we all be guided back into His presence, where He would like to love us forever. Amen. Keep looking up.